The chamber vibrated with the low hum of voices, a restless energy simmering just beneath the marble walls. And then, like the crack of a whip, Senator Tim Scott's voice cut through the air. His words weren't measured, they were sharpened. Barbed arrows aimed squarely at Representative Jasmine Crockett. With a smirk that reeked of entitlement, he leaned forward, accusing her of being unfit, reckless, and nothing more than a noisy distraction in what he framed as a serious arena. Gasps echoed faintly, though muffled by the tension thickening in the room. He raised his chin higher with every insult, as though each syllable was meant to carve his superiority deeper into the silence. To him, it was theater. To his supporters, it was dominance. And to the cameras, it was a spectacle designed to humiliate. But then, the world seemed to slow. Crockett didn't flinch. She didn't twitch. Her eyes locked forward, unblinking, steady as stone. The arrogance of Scott's words seemed to ripple outward until they collapsed against her silence, powerless to move her. In that instant, the noise of the chamber faded into a void, and all that remained was her stillness. A stillness that spoke louder than any rebuttal. The hush spread. Reporters lowered their pens. Senators shifted uneasily. Even the audience watching at home leaned closer to their screens. Because something was about to happen. Something electric, unpredictable, irreversible. The air itself felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for her to break the silence. And yet, she didn't. Not yet. Crockett sat suspended in the tension, allowing Scott's arrogance to hang in the balance, daring it to crumble under its own weight. Her calm became the story. Her silence became defiance. And in that space between his last insult and her first word, power shifted. The room may not have realized it, but history has always hinged on such moments. Not in the roar of bluster, but in the quiet, unbearable, storm, like a taut wire ready to snap. Tim Scott leaned back in his chair, convinced he had won the moment. He mistook silence for surrender, still basking in the echo of his own voice. A faint smile crept across his face, the smug look of a man certain he had delivered the final blow. But the cameras lingered on Jasmine Crockett. Her hands folded neatly, her posture unbroken, her eyes radiating a fire that no insult could extinguish. She wasn't rattled. She wasn't cornered. She was calculating. Then, with a voice cool enough to slice through steel, she began. "Senator Scott," she said, letting his name hang heavy in the room. "You speak of seriousness, of credibility, as if those things belong only to you." The hush thickened. Every head turned. Every microphone strained to capture her words. Her tone didn't rise. She didn't need to shout. Instead, she laced every word with precision, each sentence a scalpel that cut away the hollow bravado Scott had just displayed. She reminded him and everyone listening that dignity isn't performed through arrogance, but proven through resilience. She spoke not just for herself, but for every voice dismissed, every identity belittled, every community told to stay quiet in halls of power that were never built with them in mind. Scott's smirk faltered. The confidence that once seemed unshakable began to waver. He shifted in his chair, suddenly aware that the attack he had unleashed was no longer shaping the narrative. Crockett was. And then came the pivot. She didn't just defend herself. She expanded the battlefield. "When you mock me," she said, her gaze unwavering, "you mock every woman who refuses to bow, every immigrant's child who refuses to disappear, every American who has been told their presence in this chamber is a mistake." The room fell silent. No colgues, no scribles, no vispers. Just silence. What Scott had intended as a personal takedown was now reframed his career on a carefully curated image. Polished, confident, untouchable. To the public, he was the embodiment of poise and principle. To his critics, he was the symbol of entitlement disguised as service. And in this moment, as he faced Jasmine Crockett's poised defiance, the cracks in that carefully constructed facade began to reveal themselves. He had risen through privilege, navigating corridors of power with a mixture of charm, ambition, and a knack for knowing exactly which battles to pick. Every speech he gave, every campaign ad he appeared in, reinforced the narrative. Tim Scott was a man of principle, a statesman in an unforgiving arena. But behind the curated smiles and measured tones, there lingered arrogance. A belief that authority was a birthright, that dissent was weakness, and that anyone daring to challenge him could be silenced by charm or rhetoric. The audience didn't yet see the full history, but the pattern was unmistakable. In previous debates, Scott had wielded words like weapons, strategically undermining opponents with a veneer of civility while hiding the sting of personal attacks beneath polished phrases. His reputation for tactical brilliance masked a deeper truth. The man who now sneered across the chamber had long relied on optics, not integrity, to maintain his image. Contrast framed the stakes vividly. Scott's power was inherited and maintained through networks of influence, decades of strategic positioning, and the implicit weight of his name. Crockett's authority, by contrast, was earned through grassroots organizing, years of service to marginalized communities, and an unwavering commitment to truth in the face of systemic barriers. The chamber, filled with spectators and cameras, was the perfect stage for this confrontation. A clash of entitlement versus earned respect. Jasmine Crockett's journey to this chamber was anything but linear. Born into a world where doors often closed before she could knock, she learned early that resilience was not optional. It was survival. Her childhood streets were lined with stories of struggle, neighbors juggling multiple jobs, families navigating systemic barriers, and communities whose voices were often dismissed or erased. From those streets, she absorbed the unvarnished lessons of determination, empathy, and the quiet strength that comes from knowing that one's worth is not dictated by circumstance. Her early years were shaped by contradictions. Schools promised opportunity but delivered inequity. Public discourse hailed equality while everyday life revealed disparities. Crockett internalized these lessons, channeling frustration into purpose. Each setback became a lesson, each challenge a stepping stone. By the time she entered public service, she carried with her a map of lived realities, understanding intimately the struggles of those who were often unseen. As a young activist, she confronted systems that were designed to maintain the status quo. She organized, she spoke, she rallied communities whose voices had been muted for generations. Her work was meticulous, grounded in research, compassion, and unyielding moral clarity. The media often overlooked the painstaking hours she spent building trust in neighborhoods, the late nights analyzing policy, the countless moments where she chose principle over popularity. But those experiences forged her character, crafting a hero tempered in the fires of authenticity. Her ascent to Congress was not handed to her. It was earned. Crockett faced opponents with deeper pockets, more influential networks, and the advantage of name recognition. Yet she relied on the tools she had always known: clarity of purpose, connection with people, and an unwavering commitment. As Tim Scott leaned forward, his gaze sharp, his words sharper. "Congresswoman Crockett," he began, voice slicing through the chamber, "your record is impressive, but I question whether you're truly ready for the responsibilities this office demands." The statement landed like a verbal grenade, punctuated by a subtle smirk that seemed to suggest superiority, entitlement, and confidence in the assumed power dynamic. The audience stirred, a low murmur rippling through the room. Cameras caught every twitch, every glance, magnifying the clash for viewers at home. This wasn't merely a question of policy. It was a display of power versus resilience. Scott's tone carried the weight of inherited influence, while Crockett's presence exuded grounded authority born from struggle, experience, and unshakable composure. For a moment, the room seemed suspended in time. Crockett's eyes held steady, scanning the chamber, acknowledging the scrutiny of every viewer, every journalist, every citizen witnessing this high-stakes moment. She didn't flinch, didn't rise to bait. She simply breathed, letting the tension build like the charged calm before a storm. Her silence was strategic, a deliberate signal that arrogance would not provoke panic. Scott continued, his words sharpening with each sentence, attempting to provoke outrage, to rattle the composure that had become Crockett's signature. "America deserves leadership with experience, with vision, with the right pedigree to navigate the challenges ahead," he said, the subtext unmistakable. a subtle assertion of inherited privilege over earned accomplishment. Murmurs intensified. Some nodded in agreement, some frowned at the veiled condescension. The camera lingered on Crockett's unyielding posture, her measured breathing. The subtle tightening of her hands signals that she was not only absorbing but calculating her response. The debate moderator device that would alter the course of the debate, her movements calm yet purposeful. She pressed play, and a recording filled the chamber. Tim Scott's voice, unguarded, candid, and contradicting every carefully constructed public statement. The initial seconds were almost imperceptible, but their impact grew with every word. The audience froze, the subtle hum of cameras capturing the precise moment that pretense met truth. Scott's smile faltered almost immediately. The confidence that had carried him through decades of political skirmishes began to crumble, a visible twitch betraying the anxiety he had managed to conceal for so long. His rehearsed lines, polished rhetoric, and aura of authority evaporated under the weight of an undeniable contradiction. The chamber, filled with spectators, moderators, and journalists, held its collective breath. This wasn't a standard debate. It was a reckoning. Crockett's poise was a study in controlled power. She allowed each revelation to resonate, letting the silence between phrases amplify the impact. The camera captured the subtle gasps, the shifting of feet, the wide-eyed disbelief of those who had assumed Scott's dominance was unassailable. The recording revealed not just inconsistencies, but a pattern. Statements that masked intent, rhetoric that obscured accountability, a disconnect between public persona and private beliefs. The room's energy shifted. What began as an intellectual clash transformed into a moral confrontation. The hero versus villain framing crystallized. One figure wielding inherited authority and polished deception, the other embodying integrity, preparation, and authentic courage. Crockett's calm delivery highlighted the stark contrast, the power of truth against the fragility of entitlement. Viewers at home felt the tension magnify through their screens. Social media exploded in real time. Hashtag epic clapback, hashtag Crockett counter, hashtag unfit reveal recording. Instantly. The immediate shock in the debate chamber was only the beginning. Outside, the world erupted. Phones buzzed with notifications, social media feeds lit up, and hashtags began trending almost instantaneously. Hashtag Crockett clapback, hashtag unfit for office, hashtag truth prevails. The clash had transcended a single debate stage. It became a national conversation about accountability, privilege, and authentic leadership. Political commentators scrambled to dissect the footage. Late-night hosts replayed the sequence in slow motion, highlighting Scott's crumbling composure versus Crockett's steadfast calm. Memes proliferated, juxtaposing the arrogance of entitlement with the dignity of earned respect. Every clip circulated rapidly, amplifying Crockett's heroism in real time. Analysts debated not only the political consequences but also the symbolic power of the moment. A young, determined congresswoman holding a privileged figure accountable before a live audience. The viral explosion was undeniable. Celebrities, journalists, and influencers weighed in, each providing commentary, support, or analysis. Some lauded Crockett as a modern embodiment of integrity. Others dissected the strategic brilliance of her response. The contrast between her composed authority and Scott's faltering arrogance created a visual and narrative tension that audiences could not look away from. It was the kind of spectacle that bridged politics and cultural dialogue, inspiring debate, reflection, and engagement across platforms. Viewers online didn't just watch, they participated. Clips were replayed, shared, and remixed. Thousands tweeted their amazement. She just owned him. Finally, accountability. This is the leadership we need. Instagram and TikTok echoed the sentiment with short edits, reaction videos, and commentary threads. Crockett stood not merely as a victor of a debate, but as a symbol of principle, courage, and moral authority. She reframed the clash with Tim Scott not as personal vindication but as a broader reflection on what leadership truly means. The nation had witnessed a dramatic moment, yes, but the lesson extended far beyond politics. True power is earned through service, integrity, and commitment to truth, not inherited status or bluster. Crockett's voice, calm yet resolute, echoed the sentiment. Leadership, she emphasized implicitly through her poise and actions, is defined by accountability. The recording she unveiled did more than expose contradiction. It highlighted the importance of consistency between words and deeds, between public persona and private reality. Citizens could see in real time that authenticity, not entitlement, carries weight in shaping the future. The symbolism resonated widely. Across social media and media platforms, the narrative transformed. It was no longer about who won or lost a debate. It was about redefining expectations. Citizens, particularly those from marginalized communities, saw in Crockett's victory a reflection of their own struggles, resilience, and aspirations. The spectacle became a shared experience of empowerment, reinforcing that voices rooted in experience, empathy, and moral clarity can challenge even the most entrenched structures of privilege. Crockett's actions emphasized that dignity cannot be coerced, and that truth has a power of its own. In offices, classrooms, and homes across the nation, viewers reflected on the exchange. Moments of integrity, courage, and preparation resonate far beyond the immediate audience. The narrative had shifted. What seemed like a singular confrontation had become a cultural touchstone. A story about service over status settled on one of the most unforgettable debates of 2025. The story of Jasmine Crockett's composure, courage, and strategic brilliance remained etched in the minds of viewers nationwide. The headline-grabbing clash with Tim Scott was more than a viral moment. It was a lesson in integrity, accountability, and the power of preparation. Crockett had turned what could have been an attack into a defining example of leadership and moral clarity. This was a moment that transcended politics. It reminded every viewer, regardless of background, that dignity and truth outweigh arrogance and entitlement, that preparation, poise, and principle can dismantle even the most confident display of inherited power. The applause, the trending hashtags, and the endless social media debate were all reflections of a deeper truth. People crave authentic leadership and are inspired by those willing to stand firm against injustice. For the audience, this is not just a story to watch. It is a call to recognize, value, and elevate the qualities that truly matter in leaders. The spectacle of a viral clapback becomes a symbol of what is possible when courage meets principle. It is an invitation to carry these values into everyday life, to speak up, to act with integrity, and to demand accountability in every sphere of influence. If you believe moments like this matter, if you feel inspired by courage, clarity, and dignity, join the movement. Share this story, subscribe to stay connected to more moments of truth and resilience, and engage with the conversation. Your voice matters just as much as the heroes on stage, and together, we can shape a narrative that values service over status, integrity over entitlement, and courage over complacency. The debate may have ended, but the ripple of inspiration continues. Be part of it because leadership is not just observed. It is cultivated, defended, and celebrated by all of us.